I really am tired today. I apologize. As I mentioned earlier in a video you didn't see, I'm actually recording these on Sunday because I'm simply not going to have time this week to do these properly at the time I usually do them. I will be busy at work or at home. This is going to be a very busy week for me, and then Skyrim comes out Friday, so that's going to be a busy month for me. um, and I am rather tired, as this is the end of my shift on a Sunday at the end of my work week, and, I'm about to go home and enjoy my weekend. The problem here is the fact that I am so tired that I left my mic unplugged. I got all the way through my second video before I noticed. I am officially retarded. So I'm going to try this again and hopefully get the same feeling across that I just gave. My goodness. Alright. All the games I'm reviewing this week are requests that people have asked me to look at, and I have no problem looking at any of them. The first one I want to look at is obviously New Super Mario Bros. Wii. This was a game that came out for the Wii, obviously, some months ago. Actually, I think it came out last year at this point. I'm not actually 100% sure. And it received a lot of bad reviews. It received a lot of poor ratings, and in my opinion, unfairly, and for reasons I'll get into in a bit. But, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get the basic chunk of the review here out of the way right now. It's funner with a friend, it's funner with more friends, and it's probably not worth full price. And there are some problems with originality. Okay, there's the synopsis. Now let's go over this in detail. The originality thing I think I'm going to go over this with first, alright? Now I've talked to you before about remakes and how to do a proper remake, and I've talked to you about how I have no problem with a series continuing a same basic trend with the style of gameplay and with how they present themselves. A good example of a game series that does this properly is the Elder Scrolls. You could go back and play Daggerfall, or play Skyrim, or play the Fallouts, and it is still recognizably a Elder Scrolls game, right? It is still the same concept, the same theories. However, and this is the key important part, they've improved the model each time. Each time the game has moved forward a step, it has improved itself, it's polished itself, it's added to it, and it's basically made it better in every possible way, right? It is a better experience, a better game than the previous one, and each one has been a better game than the previous one, right? The way to do that the wrong way, I will point to the most extreme example I could think of, is the high-def remake that has been such a trend lately on the PS3. They'll take a PS2 game, or God forbid a PS1 game, and polish it up for high definition and put it on the PS3, and it's a port, is what that is. That's all it is a port, like they used to do on the PS1 for SNES games, and it's terrible. I mean, I'm not to dissuade it, because I can still see the purpose in it. For example, if you have a PS3 that's not backwards compatible, or if you happen to be bored swimming around in your money bin full of cash, maybe you might want to go ahead and buy it. I don't know. That's up to you. For me, though, I think I'm going to go ahead and try to hold out for actual remakes where they actually add to the game, rather than polish it for 20 seconds and then say, "Yep, there you go." Yeah, I'm sorry. All these reviews are my opinion, so I'm going to try not to hold this punch as much as I try to be tolerant and understanding. But the fact of the matter is, I personally can't stand ports. And now, New Super Mario Bros. Wii is not a port. It is not that severely bad, but it does have the same basic problems. See, what happened was they looked at a game called Super Mario Bros. 3, which many people, myself included, would say is one of the best Mario games ever released. And they said, "Awesome, let's do that again." And so they dumped it on the Wii, gave it 2 new power-ups, and said, "Go!" And polished the graphics up a bit, obviously. Now, that's not entirely fair, because these aren't... this isn't the Mario Brothers. This isn't Mario Brothers 3. These are new levels, these are new worlds. All this content is new, which is why I say it's not as bad. But it's not as good as it could have been, because they could have improved on it more. They could have done more with it. Let me try and explain here. When Donkey Kong Country, back on the SNES, was an awesome game, right? It was one of those games that never really got the kind of popularity it really deserved, and the reason for that is because it was incredibly difficult. It was built for people who were gamers, like myself, people who had the reflexes, people who had the time, people who had the interest in actually getting good at it, because it required skill. It was a hard game. It was a hard platformer. And Donkey Kong Country Returns is catering specifically to that audience. It is still difficult, it is still just as brutal, it is still just as finger-crushing, but what they did was they improved upon it, they added to it. It really does feel like a proper sequel. It really does feel like they've made a better game than the previous one, and if I were to rate it, it would get a better rating than the old one, because it's a better game. They added to it, they improved upon it, right? You know, that level design is a perfect example of that. The level design in Donkey Kong Country was nice. It was good, especially for the time. In Donkey Kong Returns, the level design blew me away. It's fantastic. I love the levels. They're interesting. They're awesome. I mean, there's a level where everyone is in silhouettes. No textures, no nothing. Just everything is silhouetted, and you have to kind of guess what that particular shadow on the wall is, and if it's just a shadow or if it's an actual platform you could jump on, you know, and stuff like that. And the only thing you could see is your tie if you're Donkey, or the cap if you're Diddy. And it's awesome. It's wonderful. And that's what I wish they had done with New Super Mario Bros. Wii. It's unfortunate. Obviously, New Super Mario Bros. Wii was first. Maybe they hadn't had these ideas yet. Maybe they hadn't figured out the hardware yet. I don't know. But I was hoping for something like that. Truly innovative, truly interesting, truly exciting new design in the levels and schematics. Now, it's not to say the levels are bad. You know, quite the contrary. I'll talk about the levels and how good they are in a minute. But the levels were not what I wanted them to be. And I will also comment on something that a lot of people have. I don't want to go into the whole code explanation I did previously, especially since I just said that, and I'm sure nobody wants to hear it anyway, so let me just summarize, right? There's a reason why most video games employ loading screens, or seamless terrain loading, or the world map type design, or stage select, that kind of thing. And that is because the hardware limitations mean so that the game can the construct can only push forward so much game at any given point in time that you're experiencing, right? You know, it takes quite a bit to have the quote-unquote seamless loading thing, just for example. Now, that's possible, but that requires something that Wii is not generally capable of. To use an example of this gone wrong, Monster Hunter Tri, while a fairly interesting and indeed engaging game, is really hard and difficult to play because there are load screens every 20 feet. And I'm not even saying that sarcastically. There are load screens everywhere, and that's how they divvied it up, because that's the decision they went with. What New Super Mario Bros. Wii did was they wanted their levels, their stages, the actual gameplay to have more. They wanted more artifacts, they wanted more capacity with the mechanics, they wanted more objects to be in them, they wanted them to be longer. And in order to do that, what they had to do was scale back so that instead of having, say, a hub-based system, they had a world map, which so only any given stage is in the memory at any given time, right? Now, I'm not going to go into the details of why this matters between a hub-based or anything like that. It's not really relevant. The point I'm getting to is that I understand why people complain about that, because technically speaking, it's a step back from where we're at, but at the same time, I have to give them points for doing that because it's something I like in all forms of media and entertainment, especially video games. It's working with your limitations rather than in spite of them. You know, Monster Hunter Tri was trying to have this gorgeous landscape. Hang on, load screen. Okay, there's the gorgeous hill load screen. It was trying to work in spite of its limitations, whereas New Super Mario Bros. Wii is actually working with the limitations. And actually, they looked at what they said, and they said, okay, we have to really knuckle down and make this work, and they did. So props there. Now let's talk about the good. Now, I'm going to get this out of the way right now. The co-op is fantastic. I'll talk about it in a little more detail last in the video, but anything I say about this game is made better if you have a friend to play it with. Just bottom line. Now, New Super Mario Bros. Wii is not that challenging. Everything I said about Donkey Kong Country Returns for gamers, New Super Mario Bros. Wii is for people who want to play the game. As weird as that's going to sound, you know, idle gamers. Actually, that's the term I want to use. People who don't dedicate themselves to being good. People don't have the time or the interest or the facility in order to become skilled at a game. Instead, they just sit down and play for fun, right? Nothing wrong with that. But my point is, this is a game designed to be picked up and played, not a game designed to be perfected. There are certainly some hard levels later on when you get to the special world at the very end if you unlock it, but shrug, you know? Nothing in the game really challenged me to the point of finger-crushing like, say, Donkey Kong Country Returns did. Now, the level design, as I said, I mentioned it earlier, is actually pretty good. It's not as innovative or exciting or wowing me as much as I'd like, but the level where there's a giant wave of lava that's constantly following you was certainly interesting, and the level where you have to run on the rotating object and your gravity's kind of doing its thing, you know, that was certainly fun, and so forth and so on. There were interesting levels, but it is worth noting, and I hate to say this because I'm trying to be positive, but the level design in Yoshi's Island back on the SNES impressed me more than the level design for this game does. Now, granted, I think Yoshi's Island is one of the best platform side-scrollers ever made, but I'm just saying, you know, they really stretched what the SNES could do with that game. There's a level where you're on a moon, right here in the middle of the screen, and this is you, and if you move to the right, this is how the screen changes, and the whole screen is changing too. The whole of the stars and the background and all that is changing. And that was just so mind-blowing back in the day, especially since no one had done it before, and indeed, basically no one's done it since, except for the Mario Galaxy team. But there's nothing really that wowed me in New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Maybe I'm just getting old, but it was just levels. Now, nothing wrong with them. Again, like I said, I was trying to be positive here. They were fun. They were interesting. They were long. They were engaging. I had a ton of fun with it. And another benefit here, as far as platformers go, as far as side rollers go, New Super Mario Bros. Wii is actually fairly long, all teams considered. I'd say like 20 hours, 30 hours, something like that, depending on how much of the optional stuff you feel like doing, which is pretty cool, all things considered, and I actually had quite a bit of fun with it. You can pull off some truly ridiculous stuff if you feel like getting skilled, and all you have to do is look up any of the skill videos either on YouTube or within the game itself, and you'll understand exactly what I mean. The level that they demonstrate with all four players cooperating to have one guy never hit the ground because they're constantly bouncing them between him between them, so he's constantly getting one-ups the whole stage. That's certainly impressive, but that's a little bit beyond what most of us, even real gamers, are willing to put in for a game like this. No offense, you know? Now, the co-op, like I was going to say, as weird as this is going to sound, because this is going to sound really weird, but the cooperative play was done exactly wrong, and that's why it was so much fun. Now, let me explain. This is a side-scrolling platformer, right? You know, and there's platforms, and there's instant death pits, and there's instant death spikes, and there's instant death lava, and there's instant death enemies, right? If you're playing with another guy at the same time on the same screen, facing the same obstacles, oh, there's also the platforms that fall as soon as you step on them, just getting that out there. If you're playing at the same time as someone else, with someone else like that, wouldn't you think that you wouldn't want to have collision? Now, some of you may not know what that means, but it basically means if my sprite on the screen bumps into your sprite on the screen, we actually hit each other. We stop like this. In most other cooperative games, especially more modern ones like Donkey Kong Country Returns, like Kirby Return to Dreamland, this is what'll happen. We'll just go right through each other, right? There's no collision there. There's no interaction there. But in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, you hit a brick wall of each other and cancel out momentum and, you know, accidentally jump on the other guy's head and send him flying into a pit, or accidentally steal his power-ups, or accidentally break the block he was standing on so he plummets to his death, or accidentally grab his feet and drag him down to his death. I think you get the general concept. And that's why it was so fun. It was so ludicrously absurd. It was so hilarious in its execution, even though that was not probably what they were going for. Nonetheless, it was incredibly enjoyable, as weird as that's going to sound. And I do have to admit that if you want to play co-op mode, you're going to have either a degree of patience or a degree of a sense of humor, really. You're going to have to be willing to admit the fact that the two of you are going to die constantly because you're going to be killing each other as much as the stage is. But it's good fun. And it was very entertaining, and I did enjoy it greatly. And so, all these being considered, the rating this game is going to get technically varies based on whether or not it's co-op, just like Donkey Kong Country Returns would get a higher rating if it was co-op, for example. But all things considered, I would go ahead, from a single-player perspective, because that's what I'm trying to do with most of my games, I would go ahead and rate New Super Mario Bros. Wii as a 3 out of 10. Definitely a good game, definitely worth buying, and definitely something I'd pick up. If you have a friend, and you have the ability to play with them, you know, like I did with Gary, or, you know, whatever, however you want to do that, I would actually bump that score up to at least a 4 out of 10, and definitely worthwhile. I really do recommend picking up and enjoying it with your friend, and having a good time with it, so...